Hey, what is up? What is up, YouTube gaming family? It is IK right here, back at it with another video for y'all today. And yeah, let's get right into it, man. Shout out to this YouTuber, Marshall No Commentary. Please go subscribe to him. He's a very good YouTuber. I like watching his content. If you guys ever want to go watch him, he's always a good YouTuber to definitely, look out for Call of Duty Warzone gameplay. So, yeah, man, let's get right into it. I have some, I have some like political philosophy pep talk to talk about, and this one's a pretty interesting topic that's been on my mind. But before I do that, be sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. So yeah, let's get right into it. For today's video, we're gonna be talking about banking, and this is always quite a interesting concept, but um, this will be more of, like my libertarian viewpoint out of how I see things, but I'm going to give you like my take on this, but I'm going to be, arguing with the question of why is there no free market driven banks to invest your money and to help you grow more wealth? So, I mean, this is a pretty easy question for me to answer, but um, like basically just to make things easier, I'm going to kind of explain things from a very simplistic, like from a simplistic worldview of like the concept of like what banking should be, but in terms of like how banks are operating, it's not what people make it out to be. So yeah, I'm gonna basically explain that concept, and hopefully you guys can understand what I'm going to say, because there's going to be a lot of economics, nerd language being explained. So yeah, let's get right into it. So my whole take on banking as a whole, I think it's always important to keep your money to be secure, no matter how rich and poor are you to be in your life. But I do believe that banks should serve a purpose for holding your money and to help you grow your money when you're at a level of which you're saving money to invest and actually get yourself to a threshold of being successful. So, personally, with me, I think when it comes to just banking in general, like if you're like the type of guy, like let's just say if you're out of work because you're disabled, you're on disability, which government comes into like the manner of quote unquote giving you social security and all that nonsensical stuff, which I'm going to talk about social security because I always like to like give people like a history lesson of like why that's a Ponzi scheme and why people just don't get it, because I mean Americans are very stupid when they don't understand this from a well, just like the general concept of Americans not understanding economics, but it's just like that population of people are very disingenuous and very ignorant. So just to make things a little bit simplistic, I'm going to just explain the whole concept with banking as a banking as a principle, like in terms of like what banking should be. So when banks are to be administered as far as a institution, a bank is supposed to hold your money for the amount of wealth that you have. Because, in a realistic mindset, if you were able to hold your money electronically and you were able to control where your funds go and how the funds are to be moved, you would actually have the funds to control to be in possession of what you own. But that's in a individualist perspective of what you should own should be your property. So in terms of money, a bank is supposed to act as a organization to hold your money and to be in the interest of defending your profits or to hold your profits, because you want to hold it to a specific location of where your funds can be. And for the most part, a lot of people could agree to say banks do hold a purpose for that, but in other cases, banks don't always do that, because there are banks out there that are very scummy and they will try to use you to take control of your wealth, and if you're not able to get your wealth, then the banks own your money, which to a degree it like, to me personally, on a political philosophical level, I think it's socialist in nature because government is involved in it, obviously, because government created the concept of a bank, but the whole function of what a bank should be is a organization that should listen to you in terms of where your money goes and how your money should be moved. And personally, with me, I like using federal credit unions. I think federal credit unions are very good. But imagine in a worldview where banks did not have to go through the state, influencing the means of controlling your wealth. And you don't have to deal with the nonsense of you being, I guess, not not so rich or not so poor, because you're kind of being left to the devices of only holding on wealth that you can actually hold on to, but you have certain limits that you're not able to exceed past, because government is involved to tell you that you can't do this and that, because certain regulations tell you that you can't make a certain amount of money past a certain threshold until your wages get garnished, because the government wants their cut, blah blah blah, which is just really stupid and it's very dumb. But I will say that in the eyes of just the government, status version of what banks are, they do serve as a organizational unit to hold your finances, to protect your wealth per se. But then on top of that, the organization has the right to invest your money with whatever they want to do, because they take that wealth. Wait, hold on. Let me pause the video. Hold on. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip it. All right. So, yeah, hold on. Let me try to find my little thing here. I'm trying to find that for y'all. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay. All right. Yep. I have it right here. Hold on. All right. I'm back. So yeah. Basically, back to what I was trying to say is that when it comes to banking as a concept, banking seems to be a good idea. But in the hands of government interference with administering the concept of a bank having to use your money however they want to, where let's just say, for example, if I invest $1 million into a bank with my money to be held inside the bank is supposed to, quote unquote, hold my money that's sitting inside the bank. But the downside of it is that the bank can also use my money however they want, because they can basically administer that money to be invested, because they're also having to charge interest on investing your money. So the interest that is being built through the bank will help grow your money, and your money is supposed to grow directly for the bank to make the investments with other people's money for you to get a return of your investment to be granted to you, which in concept of the principle, it seems to be promising. But in retrospect, when there's, let's just say, like a government economic crash politically that causes banks to not be able to hold people's wealth effectively, then therefore there is a net, yeah, there's a net monetary loss, therefore making it far more difficult for you to hold your money. So you're not able to kind of get to where you want to be, because you kind of have a certain threshold that you have to be careful with how much money is going to be granted back to you. So let's just say if the bank lost $1 million of your own wealth, the bank has certain government guideline protocols where they can only give you certain amount of money back to you, because whatever you lost inside the bank, that is that is a net loss that they quote unquote can't give back to you, because they have a certain regulatory guideline that can protect themselves from legal restitution that should be granted back to you when, if something happens to your money and the bank ends up doing something bad with it. or they end up screwing something up, or the government ends up doing something bad where the banks are just basically screwed over due to some financial debt deprivation that causes, an economy to crash and everybody's poor, and therefore the banks have lost everybody's money, or the value of your currency is so bad to the point where inflation is so terrible where you can't no longer hold your money inside of the bank, then it's worthless. I mean, it's not always to be the case, but in certain cases, if you live in a really bad nation, let's just say Nigeria, good example, their currency is really bad. They have horrible inflation. Or actually, no, better yet, I'll use Venezuela because Venezuela is a really good example. They have a lot of central banks out there where people can hold their money and do, whatever. But the amount of inflation that costs a lot of money for you to even just afford something in Venezuela is horrible. So people are basically living on piles of money that's worthless to the point where you can't even afford like a piece of toilet paper or even go to the store to even just buy something, regularly. But what's the reasoning behind it? It can't just be like, oh, it's just like the greedy banks and government's not to be let the problem. No, the government is the problem. They're the one that created that inflation to be horrible in the first place. But on top of that, they devaluize the currency to the point where you no longer have any wealth for you to trade effectively. Therefore, the inflation has gone out of control where it's now been deprecated, where it's basically worthless until there's any value being brought into the the equation where you can at least have some value within the currency that you use. So the only question is like, how do you get out of that? How do you save yourself from all that financial pressure and the financial, like impoverishment? And the answer would be is that you have to invest your money into other things. You can't just sit on fiat currency because government fiat currency doesn't hold any value. The only value that it ever holds is just that the government of your country is investing that money with other currencies that is able to compete at a level of which your government currency is able to keep the inflation down without having to exacerbate a lot of resources into making the currency more or less devalued. Yeah, more or less devalued as a currency, and they're trying to invest more to keep the currency more profitable, which if more goods and resources and services are being bought with that currency on a global level, then that country's currency is doing well. Versus if it's not doing well and the country's having to print more money out of that currency for them to barely hang on, then that's not good because that means that they're putting their whole nation into debt, but people are also exacerbating more resources out of their own economy because the governing agents that are running that government body for the nationalized services or nationalized departments through their financial sectors, they're ruining their country's economy by making the currency far more devalued and more worthless by the day, where people are going to suffer more with the intention of thinking that they can't afford anything, and they're more closer to impoverishment where they're not able to survive. So now everything kind of, explained with how I try to summarize that to make it simple for you to understand. I'm going to now switch over to. Hold on. I'm gonna pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, now that I've finished that segment off, I'm now going to explain about um the whole mindset of when you get away from government currency that's being monopolized through central banks, which central banks are inherently socialist. Now, let's imagine in a worldview, you have a worldview where banks are no longer under the control of a statist institution that can maneuver your money and to manipulate your wealth however they want. Now, what if companies or a free market competition were to come into the picture where banks can now administer, a free marketized model where you invest your money however you want, but you determine where your money goes. And the banks represent with you to listen to your commands as far as where your money should be invested with. And I was kind of thinking about this, but this is obviously it's a very unpredictable concept to see where that would go. But I'm going to like make this as simplistic as possible. Now, let's just say you like shopping at Walmart, right? Let's just say Walmart actually has their own bank. And what happens with Walmart is that with what Walmart will do is that if you like shopping at Walmart, anywhere you shop to Walmart's competition, they'll help invest your money through Walmart to increase their profits, but to also trade the amount of value of how much that they're investing with their company for you to get more money. So that would mean that if you want to put some money into Walmart, where your money is having to be kept under a Walmart, let's just say banking credit card or a debit card, but this money is to be designed where if you want to get money directly through Walmart, where if you want to get like a cash out order or anything like that, where I don't know how that would work, but it's like this is obviously just like these are like spitball ideas. So I'm just kind of just spitballing through like the concept of like understanding like, okay, how would this work if you know, if everybody's going to be like basically invested in like a pure libertarian, like free market anarchic type of style of like wherever you invest your money is how you're going to get your wealth. But how would you develop your own wealth when you're starting out? Because the biggest concept of like where you would be in terms of how you would go about actually surviving, especially in a free market competition, is that you would have to have a you would have to have competitive financial institutions that are going to trade their money with your money. So let's just say if you had like at least a couple pounds of gold, and even though gold is not like the best form of currency to transfer wealth effectively, because gold is very scarce and gold is very difficult to kind of distribute in terms of how much gold that you're trying to trade for. You have to find like a good like parameter in terms of how much value that you can get out of the gold that you can trade for. And therefore, when you take that gold and let's just say like if you want to do business with Target and they have like their own little, you know, marketized bank section that you can compete with your wealth with their wealth, saying like, hey, how much gold can I trade with your company so I can take that money from you, from your company, so I can buy groceries through Target. And Target will probably make a deal to say, okay, well, how much gold do you have? And then, you know, you tell them, hey, like, I got like one large brick of gold, and I don't know how much it would be worth, but how much are you willing to spend for my piece of gold so I can get some food to shop and possibly eat? So let's just say Target, they could say like, okay, we have a net benefit of at least $1.5 million that we can give to you for your large brick of gold if you want that type of money. And if you say, okay, yeah, sure, I'll take it, then Target, they can make a deal to say, okay, we can give you this money in cash, or do you want to have this to be administered through our Target bank that you can get enrolled into, and therefore the money that you are getting through us, you can use that money directly through our institution, where whatever money that you're bringing in to Target, we can invest it for you, and then that money can be traded amongst other companies where, you know, you can get more market share out of your own wealth. Which personally, I think that's a really good idea if businesses could like give you more money for like increasing the amount of wealth that they get from like, let's just say like, I don't know, like market trades, or let's just say market share annuity funds or anything of that manner. Like anything is possible, but it's just like there's a whole litany of good ideas that could come out of it. But it's like you can't really just say from the socialist perspective to say free marketized businesses would not do good running their own banks or running as a bank, because if a business does not have the money that they claim that they say that they have, how can you trust them in terms of them holding onto your money if you're trying to trade something in value for them? And how would you even get money out if they're going to, have like a situation where if they go under and they go bankrupt due to the fact that they did something wrong with their own company, how would you get financial protection in terms of protecting your own wealth? And I can understand that from that particular argumentative perspective. And the answer is like I don't know. Like I can't predict into the future to say that this is the right form of doing business in terms of how much money you can get out of like a company to trade for wealth. But I'll try to make this as simplistic as possible, but I think like if I trade, let's just say, I'm going to use like a really expensive resource out there in the world that's really hard to get. Let's just say I have like 100 pounds worth of caviar and I go to a seafood spot that offers to give me, hold on, let me pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, back to what I was saying. Let's just say if I go to a seafood spot and I have 100 pounds worth of caviar, and let's just say this seafood spot that is like a really famous, ultra wealthy restaurant that sells like the world's luxurious seafood known to the world. And this caviar that I managed to get from fishing for quite a long time, maybe like I've been fishing for like 2-3 years, and I managed to get a lot of caviar throughout those years. And my 100 pounds of caviar is worth $100 million for any company to buy it. And let's just say this massive seafood like company business wants to buy it off of me. But in retrospect, for them to buy it off of me, they say that I can, if I want to, buy, if I want to sell my caviar to company A, that's willing to give me $100 million for it, but in return for me to get that money, they want to offer some sort of like financial deal where, if I want to bring more wealth to their company, if I manage to get more caviar in the future and they want to buy me out for more caviar for me to sell to them to add more wealth to the company, but I'm also having to, get something in return to get a good portion of that wealth invested back to me. I think that's a good idea. I mean, it would be nice if businesses could pay you for offering like their own banks to you, where they say, hey, if you got, let's just say, like, I don't even know, like, there's so many things that you could go about creating free marketized financial institutions. Let's just say if Walmart had their own financial bank, but it's obviously your own private savings account. So think of it like Fidelity. If you've ever done business with a Fidelity to like put your money into them, don't you know how you have your own 401k, like account where you're able to do whatever you're basically, well, I mean, like you're not able to do whatever you want with it, but let's just say if you have like your own like Fidelity Go account, that's your own account where your funds are basically being held through Fidelity Go. So obviously Fidelity Go is not its own bank because you're not able to take your money out. But the only way for you to even transfer that over, you have to transfer it to a bank. Unless you could probably maybe get that mailed to you. I'm not too sure if Fidelity could possibly do that, but Fidelity is basically a investing application, company. Well, investing firm company. So it's like that's what Fidelity is designed to do. But let's just say if you had companies like Fidelity that were to operate as a financial mutual firm fund, where if you were to just put your money in as like a saving stash to just have your money there, and it's like your money that you own. So it's like when you go through this financial institution unit, they're doing their job to say this is your money. We're not touching it. We're holding it as a liaison institution to say that this is your money. So if you want to come to us for you to get your money, let's just say if you want to take out at least, let's just say $100,000 or $100 million. I'm only just making this up, but if there are businesses like that that could hold on to your wealth and your wealth is being backed up by multiple different resources like gold, silver, plutonium, whatever, that's being valued for your private savings account through a mutual savings firm fund. There's plenty of great options for there. But let's just say if you want to have businesses to kind of run as that financial institution like Walmart, Target, maybe some famous, company that has something similar to that, that could happen. There could also be other means where if you're just starting out to build your own wealth, and let's just say in a free market banking anarchy per se, like you have people that go out of their way, like just trading with one another, and it's a pure black market. So it's like, let's just say everybody is peacefully associating and they're trading sheeps for, let's just say farmers per se. Farmers are trading sheeps, lamb, pigs, and they're trading animals to get their resources. So therefore no money is being dispersed, and what's being traded is just animals for basically for property value, but also for the currency that they're having to acquire with the animals that they have, because their animals provide value. So therefore the amount of chickens and the amount of pigs and the amount of horses, all these like herding animals that they're able to get every single year to produce a certain family structure that they're able to keep on going because the animals provide value to them. But at the same token, is like, how are they keeping their wealth together if there's no money being transferred? Like, what are they doing? Are they going back to like the ancient times where, farmers are basically just trading for barter? Because if that's to be the case, then their only way of actually getting resources is having to trade the animals consistently to make sure that their property is being held up to standard. So therefore, if they're going to get some money out of it or get something out of their own wealth to produce the amount of wealth that their animals are having to provide every single year, that would be like the only way. So, I mean, granted, like I'm not going to be like the one to say that I have all the answers, because that's not my job to kind of explain from the libertarian, viewpoint. Cuz that's not our goal for people that think like me. Like the goal is to say that, credit to Stefan Molyneux, but he usually says, I don't know what would happen in this particular equation. What you can say is that there could be instances of this is what could happen in terms of this particular scenario, but you cannot predict into the future to say this is what will happen. Because that's like saying like veganism can be good under a pure libertarian society, but how would veganism work? How would veganism be good in a pure anarchic society? Because you just can't say all vegans are just going to just do whatever they want and people will just live happily ever after. No, that's never going to happen. And not everybody wants to become a vegan. I don't want to become a vegan, but does that mean that I need to be subjugated under veganism via force? Wait, hold on. Hold on, let me pause. All right, I'm back. All right, so yeah, basically what I was trying to say is like that you cannot predict variable A with variable B and C. You cannot predict what the outcomes will be. You can only state that this is what certain solutions could be, but you cannot guarantee that is what everything will be. But in terms of the solution that could be the solution that could work, because this is a free market competition, so certain things have to be tested out to see what works and what doesn't work, and if it works, then it's going to become a better solution for the long-term usage. So my only thing is that if you want to do business using a bank, and a bank is there to represent you, to represent your wealth and represent your financial earnings for you to keep, you should have every right to keep your money. You should have every right to use whatever wealth that you want, so therefore your wealth can be protected. And let's just say if you don't like banks and you just want to use cash only, but your only means of trading is that you just want to use, like, let's just say the US dollar, but this obviously doesn't exist anymore. Let's just say it's gold backed dollars. Let's just say dollars that are made from gold, but they are actually worth $100 million. And you keep it every single day. Let's just say you carry maybe like 10 grand or 15 grand. But if you go to like a store that says, hey, I can only accept like silver, But let's just say if you have goldbacks, they could break like a deal with you, but they have to like work something out with you. That can work. But obviously, not every store is going to be like that. They're going to probably say, well, I'm sorry, man. I know that you really want this product, but how about this? If you go to that store over there to trade your goldbacks for some silver, I can give you like a good deal with what you have with like your silver if you get those goldbacks from that, from that other company. That's just something that I'm just putting out there because that's something that can work in a free market competition for banking because there are plenty of good ideas that you can go about doing if stores are to work with banks and then they're able to kind of prioritize a good system of trade to say this is what bank A could do versus with bank B. And if company B and C want to create their own financial institutions to be linked with company D, Z, and E, it could work. So, I mean, furthermore, I think there's many opportunities to grow, but it's never to be guaranteed. So hopefully we could see something good out of it. And I think that's something to kind of just like brainstorm and kind of think that's a good idea to look into. So personally with me, I think free market banking is possible, but to say that it's a null and void idea that would never come into play is pretty dumb because from today's standard within the political realm of government ran banks, we already know what they've done historically. Central banks are proponents of creating war politically, where governments have used banks to obviously instigate war and also create loads of debt that people have to be subjugated to. Like, I'm not going to get into all of it, but let's just say the US Federal Reserve, like, that was designed to create a lot of debt for the US economy, and look at where we're at now as a country. Like, I'm not going to say we, but look at where the US is at now from the Federal Reserve coming into existence ever since 19 man, I always keep forgetting when the Federal Reserve came. I think they came in 1917. Yeah, 1917 if I'm not to be mistaken. Either 1917. Hold on. Let me Google it. I'll be right. All right, I'm back. So yeah, I was close. It actually came into effect in December 23rd of 1913. Signed into law by Woodrow Wilson. But yeah, Woodrow Wilson, pretty evil president. He was a racist and he was a crappy person. But yeah, like Woodrow Wilson is probably the type of idiot to even support that type of mess anyway. So yeah, the Federal Reserve was designed to create a lot of debt for the US, but before then America did have a competitive currency type, situation where you were able to kind of trade your wealth with other companies, and if you had a particular means of your wealth to kind of get by financially, you were able to do something like that. But that was never to always be the case, because what ended up happening was that I do know for a fact that the US dollar was basically administered to be legal tender in the US to use as a currency. But I know in the 1700s heading into the 1800s, a lot of laws were put into place to prevent Americans from using other currencies in competition with the US dollar, because the government wanted to make sure, well, basically to monitor people's currency to make sure everybody's using the dollar, because crazy taxes, especially before the IRS was even to be like a thing. But that's besides the point. But still, it's like you already know like how stupid that is, because it's like if you're able to like use other currency that can't be tracked, that really can't be taxed at all, then it's like what's what's at the whole point. It doesn't really make any sense to kind of say that the US dollar must be used and you have to abide to these rules, and if you don't, then that's on you and you're going to get punished by us, because we the government from the United States, from the United States governing army to tell you that this is what you need to do with managing like yourself, with making sure that your wealth is being quote unquote to be reported, as taxes, to us. So yeah, I think overall, government fiat money is pretty evil. Oh, wait, hold on, let me pause. Hold on. All right, I'm back. So yeah, basically just to finalize what I was saying, like government fiat currency is pretty evil, and if there's no free market competition of you having to choose whatever wealth you want, of however you want to accept your own currency, then therefore no nation's economy is free to do whatever you want to trade with, because it's like if you're not able to trade that currency however you want to do based off of your own personal belief of like, I only want to trade with gold and silver, but then your nation's currency is being enforced to tell you that you must trade in Zimbabwe dollars or Zimbabwe, I don't even know, like, what their currency is even called, but I'm just using that as like a primary example to say like you must do this or else, that's considered to be a quote unquote, you know, tax evasion crime or currency evasion crime. I don't even know how that's even being worded legally, but it's like that's pretty stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think overall, like having something like that would be really good in the concept like of, obviously of like the government was abolished per se, but even just having it set up where if you had a worldview of free market banking where businesses got involved with providing good banking services for you to kind of like invest your money while you're saving it, that'd be pretty dope, man. You have companies like Target that can offer that to you, Walmart, let's just say like really big companies that are very successful, but that's obviously in like a free market, anarchic worldview where government is like not controlling anything anymore, and therefore if businesses were left to their own devices to administer what they want to offer to consumers to buy services and goods for proper investments that are worth keeping your money with them, and you're able to expand that wealth to other companies and you can make more money from there to trade over with them. That's really good. I think that's a really good win-win situation because the company that makes money with you can also profit more money from businesses that they trade from them, and then they can bring that money to you and then they can give you more money to grow. So I mean, it's a very good decentralized concept to think about, but it's obviously not a perfect one-to-one match, but I'm just using that just to brainstorm to say this is what could happen in a free market competition of having actual currency to be traded like upon. So I think that's a pretty good idea mindset to see where that can go in the future. But obviously it's a very tough concept to really talk about because I'm sure people have had ideas like myself thousands of years ago, but they were never thinking like, well, how would this concept work in today's modern like economy, even though people were not alive to see the future of where they're seeing it now, of like where of like where I live right now in this current modern age. So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's pretty much what I wanted to kind of like explain about. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, I will see you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed this little TED Talk, and be sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all later. Have a great day. Peace out. I got more videos coming, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.